Hello, welcome to the world's first school-based live tuition specially designed for MES Indian School Qatar. Okay, so am I audible for you? I think this is your first class, right? Hello, are you there? Could you please just unmute your mic? Yeah, okay, tell me. Introduce yourself. I think this is your first class, right?
Yes.
Okay, so please introduce yourself with your favorite subject.
Yes, good evening. I'm Iram Firoz from class 8th B.
Okay, so
And
please, could you please open your camera?
you वेट यहाँ पर फिल्टर के साथ है या क्या है फिल्टर
It's okay.
स्टूडियो इफेक्ट्स आई थिंक हाँ रन करो यहाँ पे रन करो हो गया यस
Okay, okay, so Iram, right?
यस
Okay, so which is your favorite subject?
फेवरेट सब्जेक्ट I'd say science.
Okay, so which science? Do you like biology?
No, not
No, you
biology.
don't like biology. So which
No,
physics or chemistry? Which one do you like?
physics.
Okay, so basically, is this chapter ongoing in your school, like reaching the age of adolescence? Is it for
Yeah,
your is it
yeah,
is it for your examination, final exams?
yeah,
Okay, so I think in the previous class for this MES school, I think we have just finished this topic of secondary sexual characteristics. Okay, so we can just revise it from the beginning itself. Okay, I hope you are clear with the concepts because you have already learned it in the school, right?
yeah,
So, in the beginning, we will discuss about the two different things that is adolescence and puberty, right? So, what is basically adolescence? So, these are the changes that takes place in the body as a part of growing up, right? So, we know as a part of our growth, adolescents are mainly characterized by many kind of different features. Many kind of changes are taking place in our body, right? Because it's a natural part of our growth. Okay, so what is actually this adolescence period of time? Because it indicates that you are no longer a child on the way of becoming an adult. Okay, so in this particular period of time or in this period of adolescence or puberty, we can't say that we are a child. We are neither a child nor an adult because we are halfway between them. Okay, so we are on this journey of becoming an adult. Okay, so we can't say that we are a child because we are no more a child. Okay, because our body is showing many kinds of changes and alterations. So we are on our way to become an adult. Okay, so that is particularly we are no longer a child but on the way of becoming an adult. Okay, so that is basically adolescence. Okay, so that remember one thing, in adolescence period of time we are neither a child nor an adult. Okay, so take down the definition. Do you have your book along with you, a rough book?
yeah, I'll bring.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, so first take down the definition of adolescence. Okay, what is actually this adolescence? Okay, so adolescence is the period of life, okay, the period of life when the body undergoes changes. Okay, so as we said in the initially, as it is a period of life that in which the body undergoes certain kind of changes. Okay, which kind of changes? These changes leading to reproductive maturity. Okay, so basically it is accompanied or characterized with certain kind of changes that is actually leading an individual to a reproductively mature state. Okay, so what is basically adolescence? It is a period of life when the body undergoes changes that leads to reproductive maturity. Okay, so is that clear for you?
yes.
So what is the definition of adolescence? Tell me, what is the actual
The pe
definition of
the period of life when the body undergoes changes that leads to the reproductive maturity.
maturity? So basically, what is the result of an adolescent? period of time because we are becoming reproductively mature, right? So at the end of the adolescence or at the end of the puberty, we are reproductively mature enough to give birth to young ones or to next generation. Okay. So, adolescence, okay, which is a time period in which this adolescence begin. It is the age at which that starts from 11 and lasts up to the age of 18 or 19. Okay, so basically, adolescence start from the period of 11th age to 18 or 19 years of age. Okay, so that is basically the time period of adolescence. Okay, so that is one of the reasons why these adolescents are also known as what, teenagers. Why teenagers?
Mhm.
Because we know 13, 14, 15, everything is ending with that suffix teen,
See,
right? Okay, so adolescents are also known as teenagers. Adolescence begins basically from 13. It's not so common that it is seen around the age of 11. Okay, so basically the average time period would be 13 to 18 or 19. Okay, so that is adolescence. So we discussed the definition of adolescence and the time period of this adolescence. Okay, so we know, uh, we are familiar with this kind of changes, like especially menstruation in girls are observed during adolescence, right? So that is basically an indicator, or it is a onset of this adolescence we observe, or this phenomenon of this menstruation. Okay, so we can't say that everyone will hit this adolescence at a particular period of time, right? Because it varies from persons to person. Okay, it's vary from individuals to individuals according to their physiological conditions. Okay, because we know every individual is physiologically different from one other, right? So we know the period of adolescence varies from person to person, okay, because of their physiological organization. Okay, so what when we compare it to that of boys, okay, in girls adolescence may begin a year or two earlier than in boys. Okay, so when we compare girls with that of boys, okay, so comparatively adolescence is observed much more earlier in case of girls. Okay, so this adolescence period can range from person to person, and it is basically observed 1 or 2 years earlier in case of girls than in boys. Okay, so that was all about adolescence, the adolescence definition, its time period, the physiological differences of adolescence. Okay, so next we are going to discuss the term puberty. Okay, so what is puberty? So we know human this period of this adolescence, human body undergoes many kind of changes, right? There's several changes in the sense that changes that is leading us to reproductive maturity. Okay, so what is this? It is an indicator. These changes, okay, these changes are actually the marking the onset of the puberty. Okay, so for example, if an individual is undergoing certain kinds of changes, that is indicating that yeah, puberty has started. Okay, so it is an indicative of puberty, onset of puberty. Onset in the means beginning of puberty. Okay, so if a person has undergoing many kind of sexual changes or several physiological changes in their body, that is indicating the onset or the beginning or the initiation state of puberty. Okay, so what is the most important change? Very important. That is the most important change during puberty is that boys and girls become capable of reproduction, right? Both equally, both boys and girls after this period of adolescence are becoming capable of reproduction. Okay, that means they are able to give birth to young ones. Okay, so that is basically puberty. Okay, so they are capable of reproduction, right? And they undergo several kinds of changes that is marking the onset of puberty. Okay, is that clear for you?
yes.
Okay, so next we can discuss draw a differentiation column. Okay, two columns you have to draw and give the heading adolescence and puberty. Okay, so we can plot the differences between these adolescence and puberty. Okay, so what is first we are talking about adolescence. Okay, so adolescence in which it undergoes body undergoes changes. Okay, body undergoes changes leading to reproductive maturity. Okay, so that is a basic period of life. So for example, it is a journey or it is a phase of life in which our body undergoes several changes that will make us to reproductively mature. The definitions that we initially discussed, that is only the first thing, okay, about adolescence. And what is puberty? Puberty, it is a time, it's a period or age. So it is a constant age or a constant period of time at which both these individuals are becoming capable of reproduction. Okay, so when you compare it at that of adolescence, it might be a little bit confusing, because you might in a single stretch you might be feeling that both are equal, right? No, because adolescence is a period of life, it's a phase of life in which it is constantly undergoing changes leading to reproductive maturity. But puberty is a fixed time period or fixed age. Okay, it is a fixed age at which one is becoming capable of reproduction. So it is a period or age becoming capable of reproduction, whereas adolescence is a period of life that is undergoing changes. Okay, adolescence is basically a period of life which undergoes changes leading to reproductive maturity. So that is about adolescence and puberty. I hope it's clear for you. Adolescence is a period of life. Okay, so you have to only write the things that I've underlined. Okay, so it is a period of life when body undergoes changes leading to reproductive maturity. So it's basically leading us to reproductively mature. And puberty is a period or age at which it's a period or age at which both boys and girls are capable of reproduction. So adolescence is leading to reproductive maturity. Puberty is the age at which this both boys and girls are becoming capable of reproduction. Okay, so next, what is adolescence? The next point, that is, it is a transition period. As we said initially, we can't say that we are in a state of something like that. We are neither a child nor an adult, right? We are halfway between them. We are on the way to become an adult, right? So it is a transition period between adulthood and childhood. Okay, so adolescence is a transition period between childhood and adulthood. Okay, so that is about adolescence. The second point of adolescence, what is it? Is actually a transition period. So adolescence is a transition period between childhood and adulthood. Okay, so next, during puberty, even though we can't say that like our reproductive organs are already present during the time of our birth, right? So soon after we are born, even inside our mother's womb, we'll be having these reproductive organs. But are they functional? No. These reproductive organs are not at all functional. Okay, so after we attain this age of puberty or adolescence, then only these reproductive organs are becoming functional. That's why we are saying at the age of adolescence or puberty we are capable of reproduction, right? Why? Because at that period of time only these reproductive organs are becoming functional, so automatically then only at that period of time we'll be able to give birth to young ones. Okay, so both then male and female, the reproductive organs are becoming functional. Okay, so during puberty male and female reproductive organs are becoming functional. As a result, they are capable of reproduction. Okay, so that was the second point of puberty. Okay, the puberty at which both male and female reproductive organs are becoming functional. Okay, and they are capable of reproduction or giving birth to their young ones. Okay, so in adolescence we know, even though there are of course there are several changes undergoing in our body, so obviously it would be associated with many kind of physical and psychological changes, right? We will be feeling some kind of isolation, we will be having many kind of mood swings, everything and all. So we'll be having anger issues and all. So it depends upon this type of hormones and the role they play it. Okay, so it basically involves many kind of psychological and physical changes. Okay, so during adolescence it has many kind of psychological and physical changes. Okay, and it involves distinct physical changes in the body. Okay, so that is basically the three different points of between the differentiating features between these adolescence and puberty. Okay, so shall we move to the next slide?
Yes.
Okay, so next, primary sexual characteristics and secondary sexual characteristics. This is very important. Okay, so what is actually primary sexual characteristics? It is the types of characteristic that is present at the time of birth. Okay, so whenever we are born, when at the very time we are born, there are many kinds of characteristics that we can see at the time of our birth. Okay, so that is referred to as primary. Primary means the first one, right? Secondary means the second thing, the ones that is coming after primary. So primary would be the first thing, then remember the one that is associated with the time of our birth. Okay, so primary sexual characteristics are those characteristics that is present during the time of our birth. Okay, and what is this kind of characteristics? This presence of ovaries. Do you know what is ovaries and oviducts? These are
Yeah.
actually the, yeah, which these are actually the reproductive organs, right, in females. And the testis and penis are those we can see in males.
Then,
Okay, so these are actually the sexual sex organs that we can see in both females and males. Okay, so these things, both ovaries, oviduct in females, and testis and penis are already present during the time of our birth. So these characteristics are referred to as the primary sexual characteristics. And the secondary one is a characteristic. What are secondary sexual characteristics? The characteristic that develop during the time of puberty. Okay, so after we attain this particular age of 13, 14, or 15 and all, then only these characteristics are seen. Okay, these secondary sexual characteristics. What are these secondary sexual characteristics? For example, in females, we can see development of breast, right? So we can see breast enlargement in females. That is one of these secondary sexual characteristics. Hair pattern. Okay, hair pattern on the body, like especially in these intimate areas and all, we will be seeing this kind of hair pattern in, and in areas of armpits and all, there would be hair growth would be seen. So these are the secondary sexual characteristics in females. And what about males? Obviously the most noticing and striking thing, that is development of mustache, beard and all. And also, what is Adam's apple? Do you know what's an Adam's apple is?
yeah, that.
It's a kind of throat enlargement, right? Like for example, their sound box, the in case of males, their sound box is comparatively much larger than that of girls. Okay, so as a result, this Adam's apple is something like outgrowth of this of their sound box, okay, or their voice box. So in males, development of word, development of mustache, beards, and also hair on the chest can be observed. Hair on our chest, we girls don't have the hair on chest, right? But in case of boys, in males, they will be having this hair pattern on the chest area, and also this enlargement of the throat, or otherwise known as Adam's apple. So that is basically the differentiating factors of like primary sexual characteristics and secondary sexual characteristics. Okay. So these are the seven, not seven, no, six different secondary sexual characteristics that we can observe during adolescence. Okay. So what is this? Increase in height, change in body shape, voice change, increased activity of the sweat and sebaceous glands. Okay, do you know what is the product of the sebaceous glands and sweat glands? What do they actually produce?
Water and soil.
Okay, so sweat glands basically produce. The answer is in the name itself. What does they produce? Sweat glands?
Sweat.
Sweat. So what about the sebaceous glands? They produce sebum. Okay, sebum or oil. So sebaceous glands basically produce sebum or oil. Okay, so that is all about sebaceous and sweat glands. And the fourth, not fourth, fifth secondary sexual characteristics, development of sex organs, and this mental, intellectual, emotional maturity, that is basically under the psychological changes, okay, during this adolescence. So we will discuss each one in detail. Okay, so what is the first change that is taking place during puberty? That is increase
Reason.
in height. Okay, give the heading. First secondary sexual characteristic, that is increase in height. Why we are observing this increase in height? Do everyone look alike? Do everyone have the same kind of height? No, right? Because it depends upon each and every person. So that's the most conspicuous change. Okay, so you might be asking some kind of questions like this. So what is the most conspicuous or noticeable change that you can observe during puberty? What is that? That is increase in height. Okay, so sudden, not only increase in height, that is sudden increase in height. Okay, so that is one of the most conspicuous change that you can observe during puberty, that is sudden increase in height. Okay, so why it is there is a sudden increase in height? What would be the reason for that? So long bones, right? We know our bone start to grow, our arms start to grow at this period of puberty. Why? And this bones of these arms, okay, bones of arms and the legs elongate, so they undergoes elongation. Okay, so the bone starts to grow uncontrollably, or sometimes some kind of controlled way. So when these bones starts to grow, these legs elongate, bones of our arms and the legs starts to elongate, and that's why a person appears to be tall. Okay, so when even before when we are before this age of this adolescence, the growth of our bones is not so sufficient, or it's not so prominent. But when we attain the age of puberty, the bones of our arms, okay, the bones of our arms and our legs starts to grow, they starts to elongate, they undergo elongation. So that's why a person is tall. So write like this: bones of the arms and the legs starts elongation during puberty, Okay, so because of that, a person appears to be tall. So that is first one, increase in height. Why? Because the bones of our arms and our legs starts to elongate, and as a result of that, a person appears to be tall. Okay, so that was the first one, increase in height. Okay, that is one of the most conspicuous change. Okay, most conspicuous change during puberty is the increase in height. Why? Because the bones of
Mm.
our arms. Okay, tell me.
Starts to elongate.
Okay, so our bones of our arms and our legs starts to elongate. So that's why a person appears to be tall. Okay,
Mhm.
so that was the first secondary sexual characteristics. Okay, so and now we are comparing between these girls and boys. Okay, so girls grow faster. So girls grow faster than boys by about 18 years of age. So by attaining this 18 years of age, the girls would be showing their maximum growth. After that, they might be growing, but that could be rare. Okay, so they are growing faster than boys. Okay, after that you can write the second point like girls grow faster than boys. Okay, and they reach their maximum height by the above age of 18. Okay, so both boys and girls, okay, they reach their maximum height at the age of 18. Okay, 18, at the age of 18 both of them attain their maximum height, but comparatively girls grow faster than boys. Okay, and we know the rate of the growth in height varies different upon individuals. We know each and every individual varies, right? Like their height also varies. Why? Because of some genetic reasons, genes that they have inherited from their parents, right? So if your parents are tall, there is high possibility for you to become tall, right? So if your parents are short, there is no chance for you to become tall. You would be short enough, right? So short would be as compared to that of your parents would be short, like. Okay, so at puberty, some may grow suddenly. So there could be two different kinds of growth patterns that you can observe during puberty. How why this observed? Some may grow suddenly. Okay, so some persons may grow suddenly and they then stop down this growth. Okay, so they grow suddenly and then their growth slows down. But in some others, they grow gradually. Okay, so in some others, they grow in a step by step manner like this. Okay, so there will be like at their each period of their time, at their each and every different age, they would be growing gradually in some persons. But in some other cases, some may grow suddenly. Okay, they would be undergoing this growth in a sudden stretch and then they would be slowing down. Okay, so that was all about the increase in height. That is our first secondary sexual characteristics. Okay, so as we said, it depends upon the genes inherited from our parents, right? But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have any kind of nutritious food. We have to eat many nutritious foods and all. For what? For this
Mm.
proper growth and all. So that's why at this adolescence period of time, we know that there are several kinds of changes that is undergoing, right? So it's very important, or it's very mandatory for us to eat many kind of nutritious foods, fruits and vegetables and all, like for proper nourishment. Okay, to get adequate nourishment for the growth. For example, for our muscle growth and for our bone growth, which element is required? Do you know which element? Or
Ah,
uh, sorry.
calcium.
Yeah, very good. So calcium is required for this growth, like muscle growth and all. So basically, that's why you would be recommended to drink a glass of milk
Mhm.
every day. For what? Like for your bone growth and for your muscle growth, for their proper nourishment and all. We need this element calcium in our body. So for that, we have to consume nutritious food. Okay, we shouldn't entirely depend upon the genes by saying that yeah, they are inherited from the genes. That's why I'm becoming dwarf or short. No, we have to consume this nutritious food. Okay, so the next one is the change in body shape. Okay, so the first one was the increase in height. The second secondary sexual characteristic is the change in the body shape. How this body shape is differing in boys and in girls. Okay, so where these changes are observed in both boys and girls. Okay, so for example, in boys, they are having wider chest. Okay, so their chest area would be wider. In boys, their chest area would be wider, and which would be wider in case of girls? Their waist. Okay,
Mhm.
below their waist area, below their hip area, that region would be wider. But in case of boys, which area would be wider? Their chest area
Chest.
would be way wider. Okay, so, and what about their shoulders in boys? Shoulders generally broaden. Okay, don't get mismatched. The chest becomes wider, the shoulder starts to broaden. Okay, okay, so chest is widening, the shoulders are broadening. Okay, and what about their muscle growth? Which group of people will be having more muscle growth, boys or girls? Obviously boys will be having, right? They are having the more muscle mass, and the muscles of the body grow more prominently than in girls. Okay, so when you compare it that of girls, okay, so this muscles of this boys grow much more prominently than with that of girls. Okay, so in boys, what are the changes? Wider chest, shoulders are broadening,
And more muscle growth.
more muscle growth as we compare with that of girls. Okay, then what about girls? Their region below the waist, right? Waist area is widening in girls and the chest area is widening in case of boys. Okay, so that is a change in the body shape during adolescence. And what about the voice change? The third one is the voice change. Okay, that would be the most noticeable thing. Like when you hit this age of adolescence, you might be observing, especially in boys, they will be having an entire change in their voice, right? They will be having an entire voice modulation. Why? It's just because of their activity of this voice box. Okay, they are having a larger voice box or larynx as that compared to that of girls. So that is the first point. Their voice box or larynx, okay, it is protruding part of the throat that is called as Adam's apple. Okay, so what is basically an Adam's apple? The voice box or larynx in boys is protruding part of a throat, and that is known as Adam's apple. That is basically the outgrowth or protruding part of the throat in boys. Okay, that is basically Adam's apple. So as a result, they are having larger larynx, right? So they are having larger voice box, their voice box is larger. Okay, in boys their voice box are larger, so as a result they'll be having a deep and hoarse voice. Okay, so in boys, their voice box or larynx is protruding as a part of the throat that is called as this Adam's apple. And why it is protruding? Because their voice box is large, right? So as a result of their large voice box, they'll be having deep and hoarse voice. Okay, so you can write three different points like their voice box is protruding as a part of the throat that is Adam's apple. So they'll be having a larger voice box. The second point, and the third point would be they're having deep and hoarse voice. Okay, so since they're having a larger voice box, okay, so they'll be having or they will be developing deep and hoarse voice. Okay, so when we head on to girls, what would be the changes in the voice box in girls? Like they're having, so here it is big, in boys it is big, so obviously in girls it would be small. Yeah, small voice box. Okay, girls will be having small voice box. Can we observe, do we have an Adam's apple? Do we
No.
have a protruding part? No, because our voice box is small in size. It is very enough to accommodate inside our throat area. It's not like, it's not protruding or it's not seen as an outgrowth. Okay, so larynx is hardly visible. Okay, then you can write the second point. Larynx is hardly visible from outside. Okay, you can write only this much. I'm not making it much more confusing. Okay, you can write the second one. Larynx is hardly visible from outside. That is the second point. What is the first point? Small voice box or larynx, and the larynx is hardly visible from outside, or larynx is completely Adam's apple is completely absent. Okay, why? And the larynx is hardly visible from the outside. Okay, so as a result of the small voice box, opposite of deep, they would be having a high pitched voice. Okay, girls will be having a high pitched voice. Okay, why? Their larynx is so small and is hardly visible from the outside, so they will be having a high pitched voice. Opposite to that of deep voice, they will be having a high pitched voice. Here the voice box is larger and here the voice box is smaller,
Small.
and here Adam's apple is present, here Adam's apple is not present, and larynx is hardly visible from outside. Okay, so yeah, this is basically in male we can see this Adam's apple, the protruding part we can see, but in case of girls we can't see. It's not, it's hardly visible, right? We can't see
Mm.
any traces of Adam's apple. Okay, so why they're having, why these males are having this deep voice? Because you know the muscles. Okay, sometimes the muscles of this voice box go out of control. Okay, so as we said, their voice box is larger, so they will be having more muscles, right? So their muscles are uncontrollably undergoing this activity. Okay, they are uncontrollably doing their activity or the function. So as a result their voice is becoming what? Hoarse. Okay, and that could be like a strange kind of feeling, bizarre kind of feeling initially, but we would get used to it, like the voice modulation in voice, that would be used to it as the time changes. Okay, So the next one is the activity, increased activity of the sweat and sebaceous glands. Okay, so basically we are discussing about the sweat glands and sebaceous glands. So during this period of puberty, their activity would be more. So there is an increased activity of the sweat and sebaceous glands. Okay, so what would be the result of that? So increasing activity of the sweat and sebaceous gland means more sweat would be produced, sweat glands would be producing sweat,
Yeah.
more sweat would be produced, and the sebaceous glands would be producing more sebum. Sorry. Okay. So sebaceous glands will be producing more sebum or oil. Okay. And the sweat glands will be producing more sweat. Okay. So yeah, sebaceous glands are also known as oil glands. Okay. So sebaceous glands or oil glands, it would produce oil or sebum, and the sweat glands would produce sweat. Okay, so this is basically this outermost surface of our skin. This is anatomy or gross section of our skin or hypodermis. Okay, so skin is also known as hypodermis. Okay. So from here their glands would be present somewhat here. Okay, so through their increased activity through these tubules and all, this sebum and sweat would be produced. This is sebum. Okay, so as a result, do you observe like when we hit this age of adolescence, we'll be having this oily skin, right? Why? Because there will be having increased activity of the sebaceous glands. I am having an oily skin. Why? Because I think yeah, my sebaceous glands activity would be more. Like mainly in this T-zone area and all, we'll be developing more kind of oiliness. So as a result of what, we could develop these acne and all. May acne, pimples. That is one of the major problems in girls during this period of puberty, right? This development or this growth of this acne on your face, mainly in your cheek areas and all, and each acne, the location of each acne could, you know, vary, and it would indicate different things. Like many young people get acne and pimples. Okay, so what is the reason for this development of acne and pimples on the face? That is due to the increased activity of these glands, in the sense sebaceous glands. Okay, so basically when the sweat and sebaceous glands secrete more, okay, the sweat would be clogged inside our skin. Okay, in our deeper layers, the sebum and the sweat would be clogged. As a result, it would enlarge or bulge out as acne, or it cause inflammation. So when you start to prick your acne, okay, so that would ooze out a fluid, a particular fluid, right? So when this fluid is transferring into different areas, they would be also developing at that particular areas, they would be also developing these kind of acne. So inflammation starts there also. Okay, so that is basically this increased activity of sweat and sebaceous glands. More oil and more sweat would be produced. Okay. So next one is the development of sex organs. As we said initially, this sex organs are also already present during the time of our birth, but are they functional? No, right? Because when we hit this age of puberty or adolescence, then only this female both organs are becoming functional. Like both in case of females, the sex organs would be ovaries, right? So ovaries would be becoming functional. What do you mean by this ovaries are becoming functional? When these ovaries are becoming functional, they would release these eggs. Okay, so when ovaries are becoming functional, they would release ovum or egg. Okay, so and when, what would happen when the testis is becoming functional? When the testis is becoming functional, they would produce what? Sperms. Okay, and sperms in males, ovum in females. Okay, don't confuse. So when this testis is becoming functional during this period of puberty, it is producing what? Sperms. Okay, and when this ovaries are becoming functional during the time of puberty in females, it would be producing what? Ovum or egg. Okay, so that like ovary starts to release the mature egg. Okay, and the male starts to release, so the testis starts to produce what? Sperms. So
Mm.
that is a development of sex organs. Okay, so basically this reproductive organ of females, right? We will discuss each one. So this one is the reproductive organ of males. Like both are structurally different, right? Like in outermost structure, both are different. Okay. So this is the male one and this is the female one, right? So first we can discuss the male reproductive structure or the male reproductive system. So this is basically the testis. Okay. So males are having two testicles. Okay. So they are having a pair of testes.
Yeah.
Okay, so males are having what? A pair of testes. Males having a pair of testes, or basically when this testis becomes functional, this sperms are produced, right? Like sperms are produced, and this is epididymis, or we can say it as vas difference. Okay, vas difference. Why? Because there is a tube present here, because they have to transfer the sperms to their targeted area, right? So for that these tubes are present. So from this sperm starts to mature, they starts to travel through here. Okay, then they reach this copulatory organ, like the external copulatory organ, and this is the penis. Okay, penis, and through which this mature sperms are released. Okay, so this is the structure of a sperm. Okay, so they'll be having a head, a tail, and the middle piece. Okay, why they'll be having a tail? Because we know sperms are motile, they are movable, right? They can move. The ovum is stationary, ovum can't move. The sperms have only this capability to move. So basically they'll be having a tail like region and a head like region. Okay, so that would penetrate into that of female reproductive tract, okay, inside the vagina, and then the fertilization occurs. So from the here, from this external opening of this penis, this sperms would be discharged into this female reproductive tract. And so this is the continuation. So here comes the sperms. Sperms are released when it comes in contact with the females. Okay, sorry. So when it contacts the females, this would enter this female reproductive tract. Okay, so this would travel, and here, and it reaches here. So this is basically this sperm is waiting for this ovum to come, right? So basically this ovum is released from this. What is this? It is ovaries.
Ovaries.
Okay, so females will be having a pair of ovaries, as that case of a pair of testes. In males, a pair of ovaries would be present in females. Okay, so the ovaries are ovaries release what? Ovum or egg. Okay, so we can see this finger like projections. Okay, so this it is basically known as fimbriae. So that is for what? This fimbriae is for holding or receiving this ovum, the product of ovaries. So this basically it these ovaries would be released, and as I've said initially, like this ovum won't be having this capacity to move, right? Ovum is stationary, but due to there are many finger like, there are many hair like projections seen in this, you know, fimbriae. Okay, so then with the help of this activity, or with the help of the ciliated activities, or these hair like projections in here, this ovum starts to move, and this ovum starts to fertilize with the sperm in a particular area. Okay, at a particular junction of this oviduct. Okay, so this tube like structure is known as oviduct.
Oh,
Oviduct. Okay, oviduct, or which tube? Fallopian tube.
fallopian.
Okay, so females are having fallopian tube and males are having vas difference. So
Yes.
at a particular ovo-isthmic junction, at a particular location of this oviduct, the fertilization takes place. Okay, fertilization takes place, and it travels and it comes to the uterus. This is the uterus. Okay, so this is the uterus and the embryo. Okay, so first single cell stage. Okay, when the sperm fertilized with this ovum, it would give rise to what? Zygote. Okay, this is the first stage. This is a single cell stage. Okay, soon after this fertilization of this ovum and the sperm, it would give rise to a single cell stage, that is known as a zygote. Okay, and this zygote, when it undergoes many kind of differentiation, many kind of divisions, they would be having many cells. Okay, at zygote they'll be having a single cell. After they undergoes division, they will be having many kinds of cells, and that cell stage they are known as embryo. Okay, so when they are at this region of this oviduct, okay, they will be undergoing many divisions. Okay, so after undergoing these kind of divisions, they will get fixed to this area of this uterus. Okay, and they will become a mature embryo, and at the time of, or at the end of the 9 months, they will start to mature, and they will develop into a fully formed baby. Okay, then they are expelled out through this vagina. Okay, or this external canal. So this is the whole process, or an overview of how this fertilization takes place, or how this male and sperm and this egg fuse to form a zygote and then to an embryo. Okay, so the next one is the reaching mental, intellectual, and the emotional maturity. As we said, there will be many kind of psychological changes, right? many changes are taking place. So adolescence is also a period of change in a person's way of thinking. Okay, so as we said, there are many kind of psychological and physiological changes taking place, so it would reflect on our way of thinking, right? Our perceptions, our perspective starts to change, our viewpoints start to change. So why? Because of the psychological changes taking place in our body. And at this period of time, this adolescence feels more independent. Okay, so adolescence starts to feel more independent and they feel more self-conscious than they were before. Okay, so during due to this psychological different changes taking place, they will be feeling some kind of like self-consciousness, and they will be feeling more independent than before. And also their viewpoint starts to change, and this intellectual development takes place, and they tend to spend a considerable amount of time thinking. We know we teenagers are basically what, like overthinking. Like you guys are mostly involved in this thinking process and all. You would be feeling like what would happen this and what would happen next day, what if it go wrongs and all. So you will be thinking more, so you will be in a stage of overthinking and all. That's because of this psychological changes taking place in our body. And due to this we might feel isolated, right? Due to this psychological changes taking place in our body, we will start to feel isolated, and we will be feeling like, why is this kind of changes happening to me? It was all good before this, like when I was 10 or 11 it was all good, and why now, why I'm feeling these kind of thoughts, and why am I feeling so insecure or isolated or angry sometimes or sad sometimes, why I'm feeling this depressed kind of mood. So that is all a part of our growth. Okay, so these changes, these psychological changes are as a natural part of our growth. Okay, and you don't have to feel any kind of you don't have to feel like, why is this happening to me, or you don't have to feel any kind of insecurity, because these all things are a part of our growth. Okay, so that was all the secondary sexual characteristics: increase in height, voice modulation, the sweat and sebaceous gland activity. The last one, before that we discussed one more. What was that? Development of
Development of
sex. Yeah,
sex
development
organ.
of sex organs. Then the last one, this intellectual,
Mm.
psychological,
Mm-hmm.
emotional changes, right? So next we are going to deal about endocrine glands and exocrine glands. Do you know what is an endocrine gland and what is an exocrine gland? What would be the main difference? What would be the main sort of differentiating thing between both this endo and exo? Like
Uh,
it. Okay, tell me.
endo is internal.
Okay,
Internal.
then so you I think you plotted the difference from these endo and exo, right? Endo means internal, exo means the outside. So there are much more differences apart from that. Okay, so that we will discuss. Endocrine glands means they are ductless glands. Okay, so they won't be having any duct. Okay, so they are directly releasing their things to the bloodstream itself. They are not having any duct. Okay, endocrine glands, ductless glands, or exocrine glands are duct glands. Okay, so they are having specific ducts. Okay, so endocrine glands are basically, they do not have ducts. Okay, endocrine glands and exocrine glands are having specific ducts. Or why this exocrine glands having specific ducts? Because they have to carry or store their secretions, right? So that's why they're having specific ducts. Okay, so 1 minute please, just excuse me. So exocrine glands are having specific ducts. Okay. So endocrine glands are having no ducts. They are ductless. Okay. So then how they are releasing their products into the bloodstream? They are directly releasing. Okay. So what are their products? Hormones.
Hormones.
So endocrine glands secrete basically what? Hormones, and exocrine glands secretes enzymes. Okay. Exocrine gland secretes enzymes, and endocrine gland secretes hormones. So what are the different kinds of enzymes secreted by exocrine glands? Sweat, saliva, these things are basically secreted from this exocrine gland. So what would be an example of exocrine gland? When sweat is produced, that would be obviously from which gland?
Sweat. Um,
Sweat gland,
sweat
right?
glands.
So
Yeah.
then saliva, salivary gland, right? So sweat gland produces sweat. Okay, so one of the example of exocrine is sweat glands. Then the salivary glands produce saliva. It is also, so salivary gland is also an example exocrine gland. So hormones are basically secreted by endocrine glands, and enzymes are secreted by exocrine glands. Okay, so how these hormones are directly, they are directly released. Okay, so in case of endocrine glands, the secretions are directly released into the blood and they are transported to their target tissue or organ. So for example, endocrine glands, they do not have the duct. Okay, so their hormones or their secretions, they are directly released into the blood, and from the blood, with the help of this transporting things, other kind of carrier molecules and substances, they are transported into their target tissue or organ. Okay, they are independent of ducts, they don't need a duct for this transportation part and all. Okay, so they are directly released in the bloodstream, and from the bloodstream it is transported to their target tissue or organ. Okay, so what is an example of endocrine glands? As we said, the our sex organs, testis, ovaries. Okay, so these endocrine glands are basically the sex organs of human beings, that is testis and ovaries, the ones that we studied before. So then what is example of exocrine glands? That is salivary glands and sweat glands. So from this, then only we can when you study the example of the gland. Okay, so salivary gland, so what would be the example of the secretion? Saliva, sorry,
Mm.
sweat. Okay, and the next example is sweat gland. So what would be the secretion of the sweat gland?
Sweat.
Sweat. Okay, so that is one of the secretions of exocrine gland. And then tell me, what does a testis produce? That would be the example of hormone.
Mm.
Testis
Sperm.
produce sperm. Sperms contain testosterone. Okay, testosterone. That is basically a hormone present in this males. And ovaries produce ovum, and ovum contains estrogen. Okay, estrogen, that is basically one of hormone, example of hormone. So you can study the two examples of hormones or the secretions of this endocrine glands, that is testosterone and testosterone from testis. Yeah, from the name itself you can realize, like that is from that of testis, right? Testis. So testosterone is basically from testis and estrogen is from ovaries. Okay, can I change the slide?
Yes.
So that was all about the secondary sexual characteristics. We discussed the primary and secondary sexual characteristics, the sex organs like testes in males and ovaries in the females, that would be the reproductive organs in human beings. And testes would produce sperms and ovaries would produce ovum or ova or egg, right? So, what was the secondary sexual characteristics? These are the features that helps to distinguish between from the males and females. Okay, when you give this introduction, you can write what is actually a secondary sexual characteristics. What is a secondary sexual characteristics? These are the
Mm.
features, okay, features that helps to distinguish between the male from the female. Okay, so we know both these characteristics seen in this males and females are different, right? So these are basically the features. Secondary sexual characteristics are basically the features that helps to distinguish the male from female. Like for example, the enlargement of breast, which in which we can observe this enlargement of breast, male
Female.
and female.
Female.
Yeah, female. So for the development of mustache and beard, in which males or females?
Mm.
Yeah,
Male.
males. Okay, and what is the time? It is a time in which the testes and ovaries are reproductive organs and they produce gametes. Gametes in the sense they produce sperms and they
Oh.
produce ova. Okay, so sperms in males and ova in females. So this ova and sperms are together known as gametes. Okay, gametes. Okay, so as we said, like in girls, their breast starts to develop during the time of puberty, and due to their which gland activity cause this contribute to this development of acne and pimple on the face?
Sebaceous glands.
Yeah, sebaceous glands and sweat glands also to some extent, because when the sweat is clogged inside our skin, they also contribute to this development of acne. But comparatively, in majority of cases and majorly, the sebaceous glands are the activity contributes to this acne and pimples. And in boys, hair pattern on the chest, right? And also they start to grow facial hair and mustache and beards. Okay, boys, and this hair pattern would be observed in intimate area in both boys and girls. Like in intimate area, it means the pubic region, right? So there will be hair pattern, and also in armpits and all, like there both in girls and boys equal amount of like hair pattern or growth would be seen. Okay, like for example, you can see he was at the age of, this particular boy would be the age of like 10 or 11, like as he grew, when he attained like the age of 18 or 19, he start to develop beard, right? Like for example, it is a, like changes taking place. He start to it was like a small amount of beard was observed, then it started to grow, and finally it's attained to a fully developed beard. Like when he grown into a like a matured individual, he start to show this kind of beards and mustache on their cheek area. Okay. And also this enlargement, it is due to this increased fat deposition. Why this breast enlargement is taking place in females? It is due to this increased fat deposition. This is actually the fat. Okay. So fat basically is stored in which tissue? Adipose tissue. Okay. So fat is stored in adipose tissue. When they like, when there is an excessive fat amount, this fat deposition is mainly seen in this buttocks, thigh areas, and also in this breast. Okay, not only in the breast, this fat accumulation is seen in our thigh areas. Like when you compare it that of boys, our thighs are more larger when you compare it that of boys, right? Because why? This increased fat deposition is also seen in our thigh areas, in our buttocks areas, and also most prominently in our breast area. As a result of, there is a breast enlargement in females. Okay. So, and also their enlargement of nipples. Like for example, this is alveolar ducts. Okay. It is this through which this milk secretion is taking place. Like when we attain the age of this puberty, okay, this milk glands are already present. Like it has this capability to produce milk, but it does not produce milk. Only after we give birth to young ones, okay, only after the delivery of a female, then only they would start to release the milk. Okay. But the milk glands are already present themselves in them when they reach the age of puberty. But do they produce milk? No. When they produce milk only after their delivery, only after they give birth to young ones, then only they produce the milk. Okay, then only their milk secretion starts take place. Okay. Okay, so we know everything. We discussed many kind of from the beginning itself. We were talking about the changes, different kind of changes taking place, and why, how this changes are actually taking place. What is the main reason? Like it's the hormones, right? Mainly we know there would be a lot of hormones present in our body, and these hormones are the actual reason. Because of this physiological changes, this why, what is the core reason for this changes taking place in our body? That is due to this interplay of this hormones. These hormones are undergoing many kind of variation. Some may increase, some may decrease. Okay, so that's why as a result of that, these changes are taking place. Okay, so hormones are basically controlling the changes. Okay, the hormones control the changes which occur in adolescence. So what is a major reason behind this changes taking place in the adolescence? That is the hormones. Okay, due to the hormonal activity, due to the activities of the hormones, these changes are taking place. And what is basically hormones? And you'll be asking like state hormones. Like you'll be asking 2 mark or 1 mark question. Like what would you write first? Hormones are chemical substances. Okay, so hormones are actually chemical substances. And what are they? They are secretions. Hormones are secretions from endocrine glands or the endocrine system. Okay, so first you have read this point. Okay, hormones are the secretions from endocrine glands or the endocrine systems. Then you have to define what is the chemical nature. What is it actually? They are actually chemical substances. The nature of it, the nature of the hormones, what is it actually? It is a chemical substance. Okay, so first you have to write what is the definition of hormones and what are they actually, what are their nature. Okay, so hormones are the secretions from endocrine glands or the endocrine system, and they are actually chemical substances. Then you can write 2 examples of hormones. Like testes and ovaries are the endocrine glands, and they secrete sex hormones. And then you can write like this: testis testis produce testosterone. Testis produce testosterone. The spelling is testosterone. That is the spelling of testosterone. And what about this ovaries? Ovaries produce estrogen. Okay, so we said these hormones are produced from this endocrine glands, right? So here the endocrine gland is our testis. Okay, and our hormone is the testosterone. Okay, here our endocrine gland is the ovary. Okay, and this hormone, The secretion from this ovaries or the hormone from this endocrine gland is this estrogen. Okay, so what is hormones? Hormones are the secretions from endocrine glands or endocrine systems. These are actually chemical substances. And for example, you can write testis produces testosterone and ovaries produces estrogen. Okay, so spelling of testosterone, Testostrone, and the estrogen, Estrogen. Okay. Okay, next. So what is the changes? So how this changes is taking place? Okay, we are discussing the flow chart of these changes. Okay, so first we are discussing about males. Okay, so for example, a boy attained the age of 13. Okay, boy attained the age of 13 or 14. What happened? Okay, so he is at the age of 13 or 14. That is their onset of the puberty. So he started to be, so he is at the age of this adolescent period. Okay, so what about their testis? Testis is already present during the time of their birth, right? So the testis, when they attain the age of puberty, it starts to become functional. Testis is now functional. Okay, why? Because he has already attained the age of puberty. Now the testis is in a functional state. Okay, when it is in a functional state, what do they produce? They produce testosterone. Okay, so when the testis is functional, it produces the male hormone or the testosterone, and that is the reason for the changes in boys. And what is the changes? What is the example of the changes? Growth
Yeah.
of the facial hair or growth of this what growth of
Mustache.
this beard and
Mhm.
mustache and all. So, so at the onset of the puberty, okay, at the onset of the puberty, the testis is becoming functional. When it is becoming functional, what do they produce? It produces male hormone or testosterone, and as a result of this production of this male hormone, there are many changes in boys. And what is one of the changes? That is a
Mm.
growth of facial hair. Could you just replace it with that of female, and could you try to explain the flow chart before we head on to the next slide? I would
Yeah.
start. Okay, at the onset of puberty, what happens in females? Which is the
Ovary.
organs? Ovaries. Ovaries
Mm.
become functional. What do they produce?
Estrogen.
Estrogen. Yeah,
Female
female
hormone.
hormone or estrogen they will produce, and there occurs changes in girls.
Mm.
Right. So,
Yeah.
what is
Right.
one of the most noticeable change in girls?
Enlargement of breasts.
Okay, very good. So yeah. So at the onset of puberty, okay, I don't have to explain, you have already said it. At the onset of puberty, the ovaries become functional. They produce the female hormone or estrogen. As a result, the breast enlargement takes place or the breast starts to develop. And yeah, this is the thing that I've said initially. Like milk secreting glands or the mammary glands are produced. Okay. So the mammary glands are developed inside the breast, but they won't start to secrete milk. They will start to secrete milk only when they undergoes birth. Okay, only when they give birth to their young ones, only after that they are able to produce this milk. But they already have this mammary glands. Why? Because the breasts are already developed, right? So automatically this mammary glands would be also there, but they won't produce milk. Okay, so so that was all about today. So what all things we discussed? We discussed up to the endocrine glands or exocrine glands, right? So
Mm.
tell me one of the example of endocrine glands.
And
Endocrine.
endocrine sweat.
No, no. That was exocrine glands.
Testis and ovary.
Okay.
And exocrine glands. Sweat. Sebaceous glands.
Sweat glands and sebaceous glands. Okay. So which one is a ductless glands? Endo or exo?
Endo.
Okay. So endocrine glands were the ductless glands. And the exocrine glands would be having specific ducts. So endocrine
Glands.
glands are ductless glands. And what are the secretions of endocrine glands? They are
Testis and
hormones.
ovary.
Like, yeah, basically they are referred to as hormones. And what do they produce? Example of endocrine gland is testis, and they produce the hormone
Testis.
testosterone. And then ovaries, they are also an endocrine gland that produce
Estrogen.
the hormone estrogen.
Estrogen.
Okay, so estrogen is basically responsible for the female changes, and testosterone is responsible for the male changes, right? So why? And they do not have a duct, right? Then how do they release their things? They are directly released to the blood, and then they are transported to their target tissues or organs without the help of any duct. Okay, so they are directly releasing into the blood, and from the blood it is transporting to their target organs. Okay, And what about the exocrine glands? Exocrine glands are having specific ducts. Okay.
Mhm.
And what is the example? Sweat gland and
So,
sebaceous gland,
um,
or salivary glands. You missed salivary gland. Okay. So salivary gland and sweat gland. S and S. Salivary gland produce saliva. Sweat gland produce sweat.
right.
Okay. So they will be having specific ducts. Okay. So I think it's time to end the session. Okay. I hope everything is clear for you, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any doubts?
Mm.
Okay, so revise the things that have we discussed today. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you. You can leave now.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Bye.